20 plants, named in scripture, everyone confirmed by modern nutritional science, everyone capable of feeding a family for 30 years without replanting. Here they are. Almond. Aaron's rod is placed overnight in the tabernacle alongside the rods of every other tribal leader. By morning, Numbers 17 records, "It has not just budded, it has blossomed and produced ripe almonds." The almond was chosen as the symbol of divine authority for the most specific of reasons. It is the first tree in the biblical world to flower each spring, blooming on bare wood while everything around it is still dormant. The ancient world chose it to represent watchfulness because it is literally the first plant awake. Nutritionally, a single serving provides approximately 37% of the daily vitamin E requirement in its most bioavailable form, the fat-soluble antioxidant that protects cell membranes from oxidative damage. Hardy, in zones 5 through 9. Deer find the bitter compounds in almond skin moderately deterrent. Young trees benefit from initial protection. Dwarf varieties grow productively in a 25-gallon container. Stark Brothers and One Green World carry grafted named varieties, shell the harvest, and store in sealed glass. Shelled kernels hold for 6 months at room temperature and up to 2 years refrigerated. Tip: plant 2 different varieties for cross-pollination, which dramatically increases nut set compared to a single variety planting. Mulberry. 2 Samuel 5 records. God giving David a military signal through the movement of wind in the tops of the mulberry trees. An army general was told to read a mulberry grove as a divine clock, to wait, to listen, and to advance when the treetops moved. The tree chosen for that moment was not the rarest or most distinguished in the landscape. It was the tree at the edge of every cultivated field, producing more fruit in a summer than most households could consume, reliable enough to have been there for generations before David arrived and still standing long after. Iron, vitamin C, and antioxidant compounds at levels that commercially bred, shelf-stable fruit cannot approach. Hardy. In zones 4 through 9, deer browse young growth, but established trees handle it without lasting damage. Dwarf and weeping patio varieties grow in 25 to 30-gallon containers. Raintree, Nursery, and One Green World carry named productive varieties. Dry the berries on mesh screens until raisin-like and seal in glass or holds for up to a year. Tip: spread a sheet beneath the tree during peak harvest and shake the branches. Ripe fruit falls at a touch and collection takes minutes. Carob. Luke 15. The prodigal son has been reduced to feeding pigs and longing to eat what they eat. The Greek word Luke uses for those pods is curation, the specific term for carob pods, confirmed by the BDAG Biblical Lexicon. His destitution was measured by the distance between where he stood and a food so basic it was fed to animals. The carob tree grows from rock crevices and dry hillsides with almost no soil and no irrigation, producing every year from the same permanent woody base, with a lifespan that makes most other food trees look brief. High in fiber, naturally sweet, free of caffeine and theobromine. The carob seed is so uniform in size and weight that gem merchants used it as their standard measure. The word carat derives directly from curation. Hardy in zones 9 through 11 in the ground, grown in a container and brought inside before frost in colder climates. Deer strongly avoid the aromatic, astringent leaves. A 25-gallon container supports a productive specimen for years. One Green World and Logi's greenhouses carry container carob plants. Dried pods store indefinitely in a sealed container. Tip: roast dried pods at low heat before grinding. Roasting develops a depth of flavor that raw ground pods never achieve. Pistachio. Jacob is preparing gifts for the Egyptian official controlling the grain supply during a famine. The official is Joseph, unrecognized by his own brothers. Genesis 43 records Jacob instructing his sons to take pistachios among the gifts. A patriarch negotiating for his family's survival during an active food shortage chose pistachios as something worth sending to a ruler. That is a clearer statement of their value than any health marketing has ever produced. They contain the highest concentration of lutein and zeaxanthin among commonly eaten nuts, the primary compounds protecting the macula of the eye. Regular pistachio consumption has also been shown in clinical studies to increase beneficial gut bacteria populations more effectively than most other nuts tested. Hardy in zones 7 through 11. Deer find them moderately deterrent, not practical in containers long term. They need deep soil and sustained warmth. Rain tree. Nursery carries named varieties for warm climates. Store in shell in a cool, dry location, holds for up to 12 months. Tip: plant both a male and a female tree. Without both, there is no nut production. Capers. Ecclesiastes. 12 describes the deterioration of old age through a sequence of poetic images, ending with the observation that the caper berry fails. The plant required no explanation to ancient readers. Its seasonal behavior was as familiar as the harvest calendar. Today, the same plant is almost entirely unknown to the people who encounter its pickled buds in a grocery store jar. It grows from rock walls and dry crevices across the Mediterranean, producing the edible flower buds that become commercial capers and edible berries across a long season every year from the same permanent woody root. Hardy. In zones 8 through 11 in the ground, excellent in a 15 to 20 gallon container with sharp drainage in colder climates. Deer avoid it consistently. The bitter compounds make it one of the least palatable plants available. Companion Plants Nursery and several Etsy herb sellers carry established plants. Pack harvested buds in coarse salt or white wine vinegar in sealed glass. Salt-cured capers keep for a year or more and improve with age. Tip: harvest the buds before the flower opens. Once it opens, the bud has passed its culinary peak. Hyssop. No plant appears at more significant moments in Scripture. Exodus 12:22. Moses instructs the elders to take a bunch of hyssop and apply it to the doorposts on the night of the first Passover. Psalm 51 records David crying out, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." John 19 describes a sponge soaked in vinegar lifted to the cross on a hyssop branch. The plant was not chosen for these moments because it was common or convenient. It was chosen because the ancient world understood it had genuine cleansing and antimicrobial properties. That the ritual use of it was simultaneously a practical one. Modern research has confirmed antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral activity in hyssop's essential oil compounds, entirely consistent with its documented use across thousands of years, hardy in zones 3 through 9. Deer avoid it consistently. The aromatic volatile oils are a reliable deterrent. An 8 to 12-inch container supports a productive plant through multiple seasons. Strictly medicinal seeds carries certified organic seed. Dry harvested stems and bundles, strip the leaves and flowers, and store sealed in glass. Holds for up to a year. Tip: cut back hard after flowering each season to prevent woody dieback and encourage a second productive flush. Saffron. Song of Solomon 4:14 places saffron in a list of the most prized aromatic plants of the ancient world, alongside spikenard, calamus, and cinnamon. Its presence in that company tells you exactly how it was regarded. The saffron crocus is biologically extraordinary. It is completely sterile, incapable of producing viable seed, and perpetuates itself only through the division of underground corms. Each corm produces several offsets each season, multiplying the planting without any human intervention. 30 corms planted today expand to several hundred within 5 to 7 years entirely on their own. Hardy in zones 6 through 9. The corms contain saffronal compounds that deer find acutely unpalatable, among the most reliably deer-resistant food plants available. A 12-inch container with excellent drainage produces a meaningful harvest. Old House Gardens at oldhousegardens.com is the premier U.S. source for heritage saffron corms. Dry harvested threads on a small screen and store sealed in glass away from light. Properly dried saffron holds its potency for 3 years or more. Tip: Harvest threads in early morning when flowers have just opened before the volatile compounds begin to dissipate. Mustard. Matthew 13:31. Jesus describes a mustard seed so small it becomes the largest of garden plants, large enough for birds to nest in. His listeners understood exactly the plant he was describing because most of them had watched it happen in their own fields. Once mustard self-seeds in a growing space, it returns every season without replanting, reaching a scale that surprises anyone who has only seen the seed. The compounds it contains have been studied for anti-inflammatory effects and are the same chemical class that makes horseradish and wasabi medicinally interesting. A self-seeding annual perpetuating indefinitely in zones 3 through 10. Deer find the hot compounds moderately deterrent. A 5-gallon container supports a productive plant. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds carries numerous varieties. Harvest fully dry seed heads, thresh gently, and store sealed in glass. Mustard seeds hold potency for 5 years or more. Tip: allow a portion of each planting to drop seed before cleanup. The colony self-sustains permanently from that point forward. Now here's the passage that changes how every plant on this list needs to be understood together. Deuteronomy 8:8. Moses speaks to the people at the edge of the promised land, and rather than describing it in general terms of richness, he becomes precise. 7 specific foods are named: wheat, barley, grapevines, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. Not a climate, not a soil type. 7 foods by name as the measure of a land's value. For 3,000 years, scholars read that passage as an agricultural description. Then nutritional scientists began analyzing these 7 foods together as a system and found something genuinely difficult to attribute to coincidence. Wheat and barley together supply complementary proteins, B vitamins, and the beta-glucan fiber, for which a barley holds the highest grain concentration on Earth. Grapes deliver specific antioxidant compounds that activate the body's own cellular repair processes. Figs supply the magnesium, potassium, and calcium that grains and most fruits fail to provide in sufficient quantities, filling mineral gaps as though the list had been assembled with those gaps deliberately in mind. Pomegranates contain compounds that gut bacteria convert into potent anti-inflammatory agents, currently being studied in oncology and cardiovascular research. Olives deliver oleocanthal, a polyphenol operating through the same anti-inflammatory pathway as ibuprofen. And the monounsaturated fat they contain makes every fat-soluble vitamin from every other food on this list significantly more bioavailable. Dates provide rapid natural energy alongside antimicrobial tannins, potassium for blood pressure regulation, and iron. When analyzed together, each of the 7 provides what the others lack. The protein gaps in the grains are covered by the amino profiles of the fruits. The fat from the olives unlocks nutrients in everything surrounding them. This was not written as a nutritional prescription. It was written as a land description. But the land was defined by precisely the foods that nutritional science 3,000 years later keeps arriving at independently. Drop a comment right now and tell us which of these 20 plants you are putting in the ground first. We read every single one, and your answers shape what we cover next. We are grateful for every one of you here. Garlic. Numbers 11:5. The Israelites in the wilderness wept over the garlic they had left behind in Egypt, not a luxury. A staple so foundational that its absence was felt as genuine loss by people who had just witnessed their liberation. Egyptian medical papyri list garlic in over 22 separate medicinal preparations to records of observed outcomes accumulated across generations. Once a garlic plot is established and a portion of each harvest saved for replanting, the supply is genuinely perpetual. Each clove returns as a full head of 8 to 12 cloves, hardy, in zones 3 through 9. Deer avoid it without exception. The sulfur compounds are one of the most reliable deterrents available. A 12-inch deep container supports a productive planting. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange and Keen Organics carry named heritage varieties. Braid cured heads and hang in a cool ventilated location. Holds for 6 to 12 months. Tip: Save the largest cloves from your best producing heads each season, and over several years, you develop a locally adapted, progressively stronger strain. Lentils. Genesis 25. Esau returns from the field exhausted and trades his birthright for a bowl of Jacob's red lentil stew. The food that a man exchanged an inheritance for was the concentrated, high-protein, deeply satisfying meal that hard physical labor demands. Lentils provide complete protein when combined with grain, which is precisely how the biblical diet consumed them across almost every meal. Annual from saved seed, but saved seed perpetuates the supply indefinitely. Hardy in zones 3 through 10. Deer browse. Lentil plants readily. Protection is worthwhile in high-pressure areas. A 15-gallon container produces a meaningful harvest. Baker Creek and Fedco seeds carry heritage lentil varieties. Dry-harvested lentils sealed in airtight containers hold nutritional value and germination rate for 5 years or more. Tip: inoculate seeds with legume-specific rhizobiome bacteria before planting to maximize nitrogen-fixing benefit to surrounding soil. Black cumin. Isaiah 28. 25 to 27 describes a farmer harvesting black cumin with a rod rather than a heavy threshing sledge, because the seeds are too small and delicate for a crushing blow. The prophet embedded precise agricultural technique into a theological argument. That specificity tells you how long this plant had been cultivated and how thoroughly its handling was understood. The active compound in the seeds, the mequinone, has been studied in hundreds of peer-reviewed trials for anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, producing results consistent with thousands of years of observed medicinal use. Annual from saved seed, self-seeding vigorously in zones 3 through 10. The aromatic compounds provide moderate deer deterrence. A 5-gallon container supports a productive planting. Baker Creek carries it. Harvest seed heads when fully dry, thresh gently, and store sealed in glass. Holds its properties for years. Tip: dry toast lightly before use to release the full depth of flavor the seeds contain. Mint. Matthew 23. 23. Jesus rebukes the Pharisees for tithing mint with meticulous precision while neglecting justice and mercy. That rebuke contains an acknowledgement. Mint was genuinely worth tithing. It was cultivated at sufficient scale across ancient Judea that the religious law required a formal portion of the harvest. This was not a garden herb grown for flavor. It was a crop, taken seriously enough to form part of the formal economic relationship between a household and its religious community. Perennial in zones 3 through 9. Deer avoid it consistently. The volatile oils register as strongly aversive before they ever taste it. A 12 to 16-inch container contains the aggressive spreading habit that makes open ground growing difficult. Any garden center carries common varieties. Strictly medicinal seeds carry certified organic strains. Dry harvested stems and seal in glass holds potency for 12 to 18 months. Tip: harvest just before flowering for the highest essential oil content in the leaves. Rue. Luke 11:42 places rue alongside mint as an herb the Pharisees tithed, cultivated consistently enough and valued highly enough for formal accounting. One of the most strongly deer-resistant plants a temperate gardener can grow. The intensely bitter compounds and mild skin sensitizing quality of the sap make it genuinely aversive to browsing animals in a way few other plants match. Hardy in zones 4 through 9, a 12-inch container with good drainage suits it well. Strictly medicinal seeds carries seed. Practical note: contact with rue sap in bright sunlight can cause skin blistering in sensitive individual. Harvest wearing gloves and long sleeves. Dry leaves and store sealed in glass for culinary and medicinal use. Tip: plant rue at the edges of a food garden where its deer deterrent properties serve as passive protection for everything growing nearby. Wheat. The grain of the Passover bread, the grain Ruth gleaned in Boaz's field, the grain that sustained Israel through every period of settlement and wandering. Saved grain from each harvest perpetuates the supply indefinitely with no further purchase required. Emmer wheat and Een corn, the specific ancient varieties cultivated in the biblical world, are available from Jovial Foods and Bluebird Grain Farms. Hardy, in zones 3 through 10. Deer browse young wheat readily. Protection during early growth is worthwhile. A 15-gallon container produces a meaningful harvest on a balcony or patio. Whole wheat berries sealed with oxygen absorbers in a sealed bucket hold nutritional value and germination rate for 25 to 30 years. Tip: save grain from your most productive stalks each season to gradually select toward a locally adapted stronger strain. Barley. The 5 loaves Jesus used to feed 5,000 people in the Gospel of John were barley loaves, the grain of ordinary people, the grain the poor relied on, the grain that grew where wheat sometimes would not. Modern research has confirmed that barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan fiber found in any grain on Earth. So well documented for lowering cholesterol and stabilizing blood sugar that food manufacturers are legally permitted to print heart health claims on products containing it. Hardy in zones 3 through 10, deer browse it. A 15-gallon container supports a productive planting. Fedco seeds in Baker Creek carry heritage whole-list varieties that require less processing after harvest. Stored whole grains sealed in airtight containers hold for several years. Tip: whole-list barley varieties are far more practical for home growing than traditional hulled types that require specialized equipment to process. Grapevine. From Noah's vineyard in Genesis to the vine and branches teaching in John 15, the grapevine runs through Scripture as the primary symbol of established abundance. A plant that roots once and produces for generations. Documented European vines have been in continuous production for over a century. Hardy, in zones 4 through 9, Concord reaches zone 4, placing it within reach of most of North America. Deer browse young growth with enthusiasm. Established vines with woody trunks handle browsing better. A 15 to 25-gallon half barrel supports a productive vine for several seasons. Raintree Nursery and Stark Brothers carry name varieties. Dry harvested grapes into raisins on screens, ferment into vinegar, or press and reduce to a concentrated syrup. Tip: prune back to 2 or 3 main canes each winter. Unpruned vines produce foliage at the direct expense of fruit. Figure Genesis 3, Isaiah 38, Matthew 21, John 1. The fig appears at more significant scriptural moments than any other cultivated fruit, and not by accident. A tree that lives for decades from a single planting produces 2 crops per year in favorable climates and has sustained human populations for 11,000 documented years. Hardy in zones 7 through 10 in the ground. A 20 to 30-gallon container brings it into zones 3 through 6 with indoor overwintering. Deer browse it occasionally but do not seek it out. Raintree Nursery and One Green World carry named varieties. Dry harvested figs on screens until leathery and store sealed, holds for 12 months or more. Tip: allow a container fig to become slightly root bound before repotting. Restricted roots encourage fruit over vegetative growth. Pomegranate. Exodus 28 describes pomegranates embroidered onto the high priest's robe in blue, purple, and scarlet. The pillars of Solomon's temple were carved with 200 of them. Every appearance treats the pomegranate as a definition of what a good land produces, not as decoration. The antioxidant concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries. Hardy in zones 7 through 11 in the ground. A 15 to 25-gallon container extends growing into zones 4 and 5 with cold hardy varieties such as Salavatsky and Russian 26. The somewhat thorny structure makes it moderately deer resistant. One Green World and Raintree Nursery carry named varieties. Press the juice and reduce to a molasses that stores sealed for a year, or dry the seed arils and store sealed for months. Tip: choose cold hardy, named varieties if growing in zones 6 or below. Olive, Genesis 8. The dove returns to Noah carrying an olive branch. The image has carried the meaning of peace and restoration in human consciousness ever since, because the olive tree in the ancient world was the symbol of permanence, a tree that survives destruction and grows back from its root. With individual specimens documented at over 1,000 years of continuous production. The oleocanthal in extra virgin olive oil operates through the same anti-inflammatory pathway as ibuprofen. Hardy in zones 8 through 11 in the ground. The Arbequina variety survives to approximately 10 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the most cold-tolerant option for container growing. Deer find the bitter leaves moderately deterrent. A 20 to 25-gallon container maintains a productive specimen that can be moved before hard frost. Raintree Nursery carries named varieties. Brine Cure harvested olives in salt water for 6 to 12 months. Sealed in jars, they hold for a year. Tip: olive trees require a period of winter cool to set fruit reliably the following season. A warm winter will reduce the harvest. Date palm. Psalm 92:12 says, "The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree." The date palm earned that symbolism because it is one of the most genuinely resilient food trees on Earth, producing its harvest in desert climates that defeat everything else, living for over a century without replanting. Hardy in zones 9 through 11 for outdoor growing. Container growing allows fruiting specimens to be maintained indoors through winter in colder climates, though the extreme heat required for dates to ripen limits production outside warm zones. Deer find the thorned developing frond crowns deterrent. One Green World and specialty palm nurseries in California carry named date varieties. Dried dates store for months at room temperature and years when frozen, among the most naturally shelf-stable foods in the biblical world or any other. Tip: Medjool produces the largest fruit in warm zones. Deglet Noor offers somewhat more cold tolerance for growing at the edge of range. 20 plants, named in Scripture, still growing, still producing, still waiting to be planted. If this gave you something you will carry into the ground this season, a like takes 2 seconds and means more to us than you know. Subscribe so you do not miss what we put out next. Your support genuinely means everything to us.